So, Harry, in less than a week, right, we are celebrating the birth of Jesus. They say it's December 25th. Is that actually the day he was born, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, that's the date that was been picked. And how was it chosen? Was it chosen to celebrate his birthday or just to commemorate his birth? And I think it's more the second. A little history here. Constantine became emperor in Rome in the year 312 and became a Christian, so to speak, although a bit of a sketchy one. There was a heathen party at that time of year at the winter solstice called Saturnalia. And so the reason for the party was because a pretty depressing time of year, and they had to try to lift the spirits of the people. So, uh, so, so then, but Constantine felt awkward about having that party because it's a pretty rough party. So he renamed it and called it a Jesus Day. So celebrating the birth of Jesus to clean up the party so they could still have their party. So let's look at December 25 in Israel. How would that work? And it is winter in Israel, and the weather is tacky. It's the rainy season, lots of rain. They get most of their rain through the winter. Summer is really dry, and the winter is like the rainy season. People plant their crops in the fall, and then they kind of grow a bit all winter, and then in the spring they really go to town. So the shepherds were not likely out in the field with the sheep at that time of year, and the barn and the manger would be occupied by the livestock.
So, are you saying, Harry, in that case, that it just doesn't line up with the biblical events, what we read about the shepherds being out and Jesus being born in the manger in the Gospels?
No, but no disrespect. Constantine, he didn't do the research. He just had to deal with this party time.
Mm.
So anyways, I have a book here. So it's a book written about what the early Christians believed, and I find it really interesting. I've gone through it for a lot of different topics. So I looked up, well, what do we know about the birth of Jesus? So there was a fellow by the name of Clement of Alexandria, and he writes in the year 195 that after much research at that time, because they didn't know what time, because this is 200 years exactly after the birth of Jesus, they didn't know what time. So they did their homework, and based on all their research, it either had to be April 20 or May 20. And so let's consider the options. Okay. One of the things that stands out is that the Jewish calendar starts right short about a few weeks or somewhere around the 1st of April. Okay, so that's the kind of the beginning, plus or minus a little bit of time based on our time because it's to do with the moon. We know that the Passover is approximately April 10, plus or minus a few weeks, and that again is to do with the time of year the moon, it moves around. So, and that Jesus was crucified at the Passover, that's not necessarily connected, but it could be because we know that the Passover lamb that they ate, and God appointed the Passover to that the people had to, the center point of the Passover was eating a male lamb, either a sheep or a goat, that's a year old at the Passover. Now, year old doesn't mean exactly, but in that vicinity.
Hmm.
So, but that lines up with what would be a good time for lambing. So the shepherd is also a beautiful time of year. April is the most perfect time, not too hot, not too cold. It's beautiful spring weather and ideal. And the rainy season's kind of past and the weather's nice. And so the shepherds would be out with the flock and particularly paying attention, lots of shepherds, because lambing's a lot of work and you have to make sure that everything goes right. And day and night, you're paying attention to them. And so that would line up. So there's no shortage of shepherds out there. Also, Joseph and Mary, if this is the time of year that Jesus was born, would have to travel, and also the emperor would not have expected them to travel in
No,
horrible
of
weather.
course, right?
And the summer's too hot, the winter's too messy, and this would be ideal for all of the Roman Empire to come to go to their own town to be counted. So also there's one more item, and people have argued for this, and I like the idea that, but see, this was the new calendar year. So when was Jesus born? And God appointed that calendar year 1500 years earlier to Moses. This will be your new calendar, he said. And uh, it would make sense that Jesus would be born at the early part of the calendar. So there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that I think that would make April 1920, those are the two dates they mentioned, likely correct, versus May. May is a little late and it doesn't line up with the Passover. And I think the Passover season, and a lot of people are traveling that time of year and so on. It was so the Clement, so what's Clement suggested in 195, I think would be right, based on the practical, the historical, and circumstantial evidence. It's not critical, as we know, but what Jesus did for us at the Passover 34 years after that at Calvary, that is critical, and that is really important. And do they tie together? Was he born in the spring? And did he die? Is he born and died both at the same time of year? That makes sense. People claim that he went into ministry at age 30, but it says 30 or thereabouts. He was supposedly in ministry for 3.5 years. Yeah, maybe, but it doesn't say exactly. But we know that he started about age 30, so he could have been 30 plus a bit. And we do know when he died, because we know he died at Passover, and maybe he was born at that time of year. But it all kind of makes sense. But that's just the thought of the day.
Yeah, and for sure. And the most important part is remembering the Calvary and what he has done and accomplished for our behalf.
For
But
sure.
amen. Thanks a lot for this, Harry.
Thank you.